I'm Victoria Morley-Jones. I'm a partner in our residential development team in our Bristol office, and I have been dealing with new build transactions for purchasers and developers for over 20 years now. Sure. The process for buying a new build property will generally start with the customer making a reservation at the site. So once they've found a property that they want to buy, they will make that reservation with the developer, who will take a reservation deposit from them, and that is then taken off the balance that they pay on completion. It's just a holding fee with the developer. The developer will then ask you to confirm your solicitors. You would then need to instruct a specialist new build conveyancer, I would suggest. The process for the solicitor is a little bit different to just buying a routine, regular residential property, because there's a little bit more involved. Once you've instructed your solicitor, they will take some money off you. This part of the transaction, everything will seem really quick. So the whole point of a new build transaction with a developer is that you try and aim for a 28-day exchange. What will happen is your team will sort of pick up your ID and AML requirements immediately. They'll ask you for money on account for search payments immediately, and those searches will be processed straight away. Searches for new build properties are slightly different in that we quite often have arrangements with search providers where we can get hold of the searches a bit quicker. We'll quite often upload sites that we do lots of work or we do lots of transactions. We'll upload a plan to our search providers in advance and ask them if they can sort of prepare essentially a set of searches which will be specific to your plot. But it just means that they can turn them around faster. Your mortgage offer will come through. Your solicitor will then send your what we call a CML form, which is basically a list of the price and the incentives that the developer's offering. So we will refer that, and if you're receiving a gift or any monies from somebody else who's helping you to buy the property, we'll refer that to your lender. We'll also be looking at your lender's requirements for a new build property on sites where the roads and the drains aren't in place, or they're not adopted and maintained by the local authority or the water provider. The lenders sometimes have different processes. Then you have exchange. This is where the process splits, basically. If you're buying a property which is already built, you would have a fixed completion date. Otherwise, if you're buying off plan, you do what we call exchange on notice, which means that no fixed completion date is given, and the developer will just serve notice on us when the property is physically complete. If you're exchanging on notice, then the developer will send you the building regulation sign-off and a copy of your building warranty. Now, the warranty is one of the different things about buying a brand new property, and most lenders will insist that you have that structural warranty in place for 10 years, just in case anything goes wrong. Your solicitor would, in the background, be liaising with your lender to get your money released, and at that point then physical completion happens. That's where you get the keys, basically, and you move in, and then afterwards, for a few weeks, your solicitor will be dealing with the post-completion requirements. That's a little bit more complex than it used to be now because of the delays with the land registry. It can take up to 2 years to register a title at the land registry. And the process is just a little bit longer than it would be if it was an existing title and it was already registered at the land registry. Essentially, solicitor's job when you're buying a new build property is to make sure that all of the I's are dotted and all of the T's are crossed, everything. We're creating a brand new title from start here. So we'll review the contract and we'll make sure that that's as fairly weighted towards you as we can. Unfortunately, a lot of the bigger developers and national developers have what they call a group or a house contract, which the paperwork will arrive and land on the solicitor's desk and it will say, we don't accept any amendments at all. But there's certain key things that we'd be looking for that we'd expect to be in that contract for you. So we will review the contract, we will review the transfer or the lease document and highlight anything that we think is relevant to you. And we'll just go through that with you and make sure that there's nothing too onerous and guide you towards your obligations in that transfer. Make sure all of your rights are adequately protected, so you've got rights of way across the roads and across the shared footpaths and the use of any communal amenities that are on the development. In terms of sort of going through the transfer and the lease with you. Again, that's something which will be in a pro forma document that we can't really make specific or bespoke amendments to. So it's a case of just explaining to you what your obligations will be and what the management company or the developer's obligations are in that transfer to you. We will review the plans. There's usually a specific plan for your property, and then there's a plan for the wider estate or the development, depending on what type of development it is. So it's a second pair of eyes on the plans. We'll also be looking at the warranty to make sure that the warranty is suitable for the type of property that you're buying. We would be reviewing the planning documentation. Prior to commencement of work on the site, there will be pre-commencement conditions, and we need to make sure that those have been discharged and that the developer has provided the council and local authority with the documentation that they need to. There's quite often pre-occupation conditions in planning documents, which mean that you can't live at the property until, and you can't occupy the property until the council have discharged those planning conditions. We're looking to see if any payments have been made by the developers as well. Sometimes there's financial contributions that are needed in relation to larger developments for things like construction of a school or construction of a pharmacy or doctor's surgery, that type of thing. There's also CIL payments, which is community infrastructure levies, which are charged for developers. We'll be looking at the environmental side of the property. We'll do an environmental search to ascertain if the property is located on a floodplain. Climate change obviously means that we've now got different things to consider when we're looking at the environmental searches for you. We're trying to give you as much information as we possibly can before you purchase the property. Section 104 and 38 agreements, that's what we call adoption agreements. So we'll be looking for those. If they're not in place yet, which is quite often the case, we'll be making sure that a bond or the process is started with the local authority. Alternatively, we'd also be looking at your contract and your transfer to make sure that there's obligations on the developer in both to provide and comply with any sectional agreements and make sure that they're put in place. That's the sort of planning and infrastructure side of things. We then have to deal with your lender's requirements. They'll be asking us to confirm, let them know if there's anything untoward or unusual. I think I've previously mentioned the difference between exchanging on notice and exchanging with a fixed completion date. So the process splits, and it depends on what transaction you're dealing with, which way it goes basically. But once the property is constructed and signed off, we'd be checking the building regulation and warranty. There's nothing in the warranty or in the construction of the property which would mean that the warranty is voided in any way or that it's not valid and that you haven't got that full protection. Otherwise, the solicitor's involvement is pretty much up to the point where you collect your keys. If something goes wrong, that's where we do tend to have conversations with clients after they've taken occupation. That's usually in relation to any snagging defects, and sometimes it can just be a case of us giving the developers a nudge, or in the event that things do take a downward turn and there are issues with the build, there is now the New Homes Quality Board and the New Homes Ombudsman, which will protect the buyer's position. They're there to make sure that excellent standards are maintained by developers. We don't tend to get involved in that side of things, but we are there and we are able to offer help and guidance in the horrible event that anything does go wrong. In theory, it should be quick. If the property's built, then it can be that you pick up your keys within a matter of weeks. If you're obtaining a mortgage, then that might take up to 4 weeks while your mortgage offer comes in and the searches are processed. If you're a cash buyer, it can be a lot quicker. It depends on the internal processes that we need to take in terms of anti-money laundering, getting you signed up, and then making sure that we've got the money on account to be able to complete for you. If you're buying a property that's already constructed, it will be relatively quick. If you're purchasing off plan, it can take a lot longer. With purchasing a property off plan, you need to prepare for delays. The build can also be brought forward. You shouldn't bank on the anticipated legal completion date. You do need to be prepared for the property to either be constructed sooner or there may be delays in the build, so that's going to take a bit longer. The only other thing to think about is that mortgage offers expire usually within 6 months. So if you are acquiring a mortgage to purchase the property, you need to keep an eye on the expiry of the mortgage, and obviously if your lender requires a re-inspection as well, We want to line that up as quickly as you can so that you're able to complete within the 10 working days notice in the contract. While the property might look like it's physically complete and you're able to move in, unfortunately you can't move in until the building regulation completion certificate has been provided and the warranty is in place. So unfortunately the answer to that is no. Yes, you can pull out of purchasing a new build property, but it will depend when in the process how easy that is to do. If you haven't exchanged contracts and you're not committed to purchase the property, then you can withdraw at any point. You may lose your reservation fee if you do that. It does depend on the developer and the circumstances and the reason that you're withdrawing from the transaction. If you were to pull out after exchange, it's a little bit more complicated because you have financially and legally committed to purchasing this property and you've provided your 10% deposit. If you withdraw after exchange and it's not within the conditions of the contract which would allow you to terminate the contract, then you could stand to lose your deposit and the developer could come and pursue you for any losses that they make in accordance with the terms of the contract. It's also worth saying that if anything was to happen to you between exchange and completion, your estate is still committed to purchasing the property because the contracts have been exchanged. So it's always important once you have exchanged contracts to update your personal affairs, things like your life insurance, your will, and make your family aware of this financial commitment that you've entered into. Thank you for listening. And if you have any other questions in relation to new build, residential property, or if you're a developer looking for assistance with plot sales, please visit the link in the description below.